Tēnā koutou katoa, and to you all, just wanted to mihi to you all. And I was going to give some reflections, but with the time that we have, I may not have the opportunity to give the reflections, which is okay with me. I do, however, want to acknowledge you all. I want to acknowledge also the audience. It reached 109 while we were talking. So it reached 109, but to you, Elisa Peta, I just want to acknowledge you because the questions you posed, and I'm going to keep an eye on the 2 minutes that I have left, but the questions that you ended up posing to the panelists are some of the leading questions that I've heard. Now, I want to go through with some of the insights that I saw. And I think the first one was around Whakapapa and everything else. And I know, Karamia, when you ended up acknowledging your parents and the fact that they worked in the public sector, public service. And, you know, there's as you know, there's an old Samoan proverb which goes ole ala, ile pule, ole tautua, which is the road to leadership is through service. And I want to acknowledge you in regards to that because you acknowledge your parents and the fact that they put upon you the service that they were doing as leaders, and that's also followed with you. Now, Robbie, for you, what I took out of the Whakapapa for me was 6,000 to 7,000 of us. That is what you said when you were acknowledging your tupuna. And one of the key things was to look after Tāmaki Makaurau. And you know, again with your tupuna, for me again was all about ainga, it was about whānau. To you, Monsor, your Peter, your Uncle Peter, that you mentioned, and you said to his that, you know, it was important that you acknowledge where you come from, but also he was the impetus that got you to get to where you are, and everybody's got your fella's bio. So, you know, acknowledging your tupuna, your parents is so important. When I also look at it and the questions, look, I'm just going to go through some of this because I love the kōrero, and I'm sorry it's now 7 o'clock.
Don't worry about it. Couple minutes over.
Yeah, look, I really did, because when you said, you know, you asked them, I mean, projects that you are proud of, you know, and when I ended sort of going through Monsor, for you it was breaking down the barriers, you know, and you are so right in breaking down those barriers, because if you don't start breaking down the barriers, we're always going to be pushing up against the same things all the time. And so, Monsor, to you, so important about breaking those barriers. Robbie, for you, it was returning and promoting the original names to our whenua. And what's so important as well was the whakapapa to those names, because it's no good just putting a name there and nobody knows the whakapapa to it. And for me, it's reflecting on Auckland Council with Te Kete Rukuruku. You know, that is our policy at the moment, because we wish to return those names. But guess who's going to return those names? Not Auckland Council, it's not the Kauniera, it's our mana whenua who are going to return those names. And just recently, we went through the committee around regional parks and the dual naming of our regional parks. That is so important for our mana whenua. Karamia, when you said it was access making policy, barrier breaking for the next generation through the environment, self-determination. You know, that is what is so key to driving everything that you have. And I know it's 2 minutes past, but look, I'm on a roll now. And I just really wanted to, the reason I want to do this is because I want to acknowledge all the kōrero, all the talanoa that has happened, but the kōrero that you have given to the people who are on here, I want to acknowledge that. You know, and Elisabetta, you ended up saying inventing our jobs as we go, ask really hard questions about ourselves. And the key example for you was with your with you know 150 years from your perspective. It's the first in my whānau in 150 years to receive your moko kaua, a kaue. You know, so look, that's what this is all about, and it's acknowledging the first. Partnerships, you asked about partnerships. Now with partnerships, again, with you, Monso, you mentioned the due role holders that you hold, the due roles that you hold. And I'm mihi to that. You also mentioned in your thesis around wahi tapu and Te Koti's pursuit. You know, this is the beginning for you. And again, I acknowledge that. Karamea, when you ended up committing to listening through conversations, and it's about the accountability. You know, this is what's so key. This is what the people are listening in regards to that. Can I just finish off on the last one, because I love the last question. You know, Elisabetta, I love the last question because it's, what do you want to see? You know, what's your legacy? And that question is a very good one, because it gives us an insight into the future. And that's what you've given our panelists. And Robbie, the first thing that you wanted to do straight away was to acknowledge iwi, your neighbouring iwi. You acknowledge Ngāti Paua. You acknowledge our Waiohua collective. You acknowledge Te Kawaраwa Maki. So for you, acknowledge them first, and then you ended up going back to your iwi. So, and I love that, because what you said was, and I've written it down so I can use it, and when I do use it, I'll be quoting you, Robbie, it won't be from me, and that is, I am the iwi is me. So look, and I totally agree with it. You also want to see heaps of things happen. Te reo Māori spoken by everyone, villages everywhere, papakainga. You got waters a lot cleaner than what we have now, more green around the area, and that's not cannabis, but you know what I mean. You know, it's more green about that. Karamea, when you ended up going more sustainable, or moved to sustainable supply chains. Why? Because the housing stock built from supply chains is better for our world. And you're right, it is, because the ownership needs to come back with us. Urban spaces, more inclusive planning that upholds young people's mana. Non-Māori, non-Pacific people, they need to come on the waka with us. Because the job is just too big for Māori and Pacific. And I totally agree, because it is all of us together in the waka. Monso, you know, the fact that you want to be a registered architect, again, you mentioned your uncle Peter. And, you know, when he said to you, whatever you can draw, I can build. You didn't mention sustainability. Good architecture has the ability to do that around the sustainability. And, you know, just to finish off to our MC, I mihi to you. But you know, for you was ecology of us as working together and what exists. And tiriti tangata whenua have the voice, and you know, tangata tiriti, and it has to be aspirational. To you all, I mihi to you all. I thank you so much. What Philip Wihongi, whānau from up home, he is right. You are the leaders, and you will end up leading. There's a whakatauki I just wanted to mention, but before I hand it over to you, Robbie, and it's one, listening to you all from my perspective, ends up, I think, for me doing, and that it's e hara taku toa I te toa takitahi. Engari, e toa takitini. My strength is not that of a single warrior, but that of many. the reason I say that is because you have all acknowledged your tūpuna and your whakapapa. Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. I'm going to hand it back to Robbie and to everybody and those included. Thank you so much. Kia ora nā. Sorry to take so much. Kia ora.
Taku rangatira tēnā koe. Anei rā mātou e mihi atu nei ki a koe. Mō I whai wāhi mai ki Wainganui I a mātou I tēnei pō. Ko ia tēnei ko te kotahitanga o tātou e manaaki nei tō tātou whenua I ngā whenua nei o tāmaki makaurau. Ko koe tēnā I pā ki tēnā kaupapa I tēnā kaupapa. Ko ngā kaupapa I kōrero hia e mātou I tēnei pō. O tira ko ngā kaupapa e wawata tia nei e tātou hei oranga mō tātou katoa no reira e taku rangatira tēnā koe. Tēnei ka tautoko ake hoki rā I ngā mihi kia koutou e oku hoa, e aku tuahine, e te tuakana. I mua I taku whakakapi I tēnei hui, e whakaro nui ana kia Grayson. Taranaki maunga, e mihi atu ana rā ki aia, ki taku matua hoki anō rā, kia matua Phil Ihongi, ko ia te take, kei konei tātou katoa I tēnei pō, nāna tātou I pōhiri mai, kia piri mai ki tēnei pō, ko ia tērā I mau atu ki tōna kura pō, ko ia tēnei ko tāna pō whakamutunga, no reira ko ngā whakaaro nui ki aia, o tira kia koutou katoa, e te iwi e whakarongo mai nā, koutou kua mātakitaki mai nei I tēnei pō, tēnei te mihi rangatira kia koutou katoa, ko ngā manaakitanga, ko ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ka taki nā he karakia. Unuhia atu rā te pūtake o ngā kōrero I te wānanga, unuhia atu rā te hautapu ariki. E rongo e whakairia rā kia paitara awhare, ka whakamau ai kia tīna, hui e tai ki e.
All the best, you fellas. Well done, man. That was so cool. Notice I didn't mention my age because I don't want to up your fellas' level. When you get somebody this old. So no way was I going to mention how old I am. So look, ka kite anō, whaasui fua.
Yeah, hopefully to see you again in the flesh one day.
Aye, for sure.
Yeah, thank you everyone. All right, ka kite.